Welcome, thanks for joining me, astrologer Patrick Arundell, for the latest of my deep dive series. Today I'm going to explore Mercury's retrograde through the fiery, passionate Aries, which begins on the 1st of April and goes through to the 25th. What's the significance of this? We know that Mercury retrogrades can undoubtedly cause glitches, whether it's to do with technology, misunderstandings, those proverbial cross wires. But also Mercury retrogrades do give us an opportunity to reset, recalibrate and work out something that hasn't been quite as effective as it could be. So there is an opportunity, and that's what I want to share as well. Now the whole process is not limited to Mercury's exact retrograde. You probably know about the pre and post retrograde shadows, but if not, the whole process takes 9.6 weeks. And there is a wonderful synchronicity to the whole process. When Mercury goes into its pre-retrograde shadow, as it did on the 19th of March, at that point, 15 degrees 58, that's where Mercury will get back to when the retrograde comes to an end on the 25th of April. But the retrograde itself starts at 27 degrees and 13, and when we get out of the post-retrograde shadow, that's the degree we get back to on the 13th of May. So it's really fascinating how it works out. Now, year 2024 is a year of mainly fire Mercury retrogrades. I'm going to explore that in more depth. There is 10 days of Mercury retrograde in its second home sign of Virgo in August. But last year, 2023, was mainly a Mercury Earth year, except that Mercury moved into the fiery Sagittarius at the end of the year, but then went into a retrograde. So as we came into this year, Mercury was retrograde, and also it's going to end this year with Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius. So much to share with you, because I hope that by unpacking all of this, we'll be able to see the big picture, but also work with the immediate energy of Mercury going through Aries in an effective way. I'm then going to go through each of the 12 signs from Aries through to Pisces and share your perspective from the view of your ascendant, the sun or the moon. If you're new to my channel, thank you so much for joining us. This is very much a community. If you have any thoughts, please share them. If you're a returning visitor, all your views and comments are truly appreciated. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, please click or tap on the bell notification symbol. Hopefully you'll get an update from YouTube every time I drop a new video. Now, I've been producing daily written horoscopes for near to 30 years, and my work features in one of Britain's most read daily papers. If you'd like to get your free daily horoscope fired to your device each morning, you can click on the subscription link underneath this video. I also provide an overview of the primary astrological influence of that day, which paints the bigger picture. And if you'd like to have a one-to-one with me, why not check out my testimonials? I don't edit them, they just come straight out of the comments box and go onto my website. I think I'm the only astrologer that actually shares all of my testimonials going back that I've ever seen, and you're very welcome to check through those, and it would be an honour to work with you directly. So I'm just going to share a little bit about the big picture of Mercury in 2024. So as we came into the year, Mercury was in Sagittarius, where it's detrimented, but it was very close to the ruler of Aries, Mars. That combination creates a degree of impatience. Sagittarius likes the big picture. It's not so bothered about the detail, which of course comes from the rulership of Mercury through Virgo. But also, both of them were squared off by Neptune in the very sensitive location of Pisces. Now that's the 12th zodiac sign, competing with two energies in House 9. House 9 is about that big picture, can be about international affairs, travel, distribution, the rule of law, borders, and international affairs as well. And also the 9th house, or the sign of Sagittarius, can be very much to do with publishing, digital or print. the 12th house energy of Neptune applying to Mercury and the square and Mars can create a real potential for misinformation, a really serious one. So particularly when we're talking about current affairs and politics and the news cycle, I think this is a year where we need to be particularly skeptical to what we're being fed, because there could be an agenda. But also when it comes to technology, which obviously Mercury is very, very closely linked to, and the delivery of goods or getting from A to B, transportation, public transport or our own driving, Mercury and Mars together suggest with Mercury retrograde not to rush the journey, but also not to get distracted, because Neptune can create those distractions. And also by the end of the year, Mercury's back in Sagittarius in retrograde again. But it does have those 10 days. It starts the retrograde, the next retrograde begins on August the 5th to the 28th after this one, beginning in Leo, but it inverts back into Virgo. So get 10 days of Mercury Earth retrograde this year. Last year it was all a Mercury Earth retrograde year, apart from when Mercury moved into Sagittarius. So it's amazing how these cycles work. 2 years ago it was air Mercury retrogrades. So that energy that came into the year, the solar return, is one that we need to be really conscious of. And that brings us to the 10th of March when Mercury moved into Aries. Let's have a look and see what that event chart told us, because I think it's really significant. So this suggests the likely overview energy that we will experience through the entire process of 9.6 weeks. And there's Mercury at 0 degrees. But look at Pluto at 126 in the sign of Aquarius. These two haven't been in this relationship for over 220 years in these two signs. They're in sextile, 60 degrees, enabling. Mercury's about talk and thought in the sign of Aries, about urgency. And because right at the end of its journey through Pisces, where it's detrimented, it also connected with Neptune. So we had the square at the start of the year, then the conjunction. If in the early parts of March you found it very, very hard to think clearly, or your physical energy was very low, or you were having the most vivid dreams, or there was a sense of a lack of vitality, really not a surprise. Mercury then makes its way into Aries, followed by the Sun on the 19th with the spring equinox, and energy starts to work its way up again, but we've still got the collective in the sign of Pisces, including the planet of resistance, Saturn, really important. But that angle between Pluto and Mercury suggests an opportunity to communicate clearly and passionately, Mercury in Aries, about what affects us all. So that can be to do with human rights, can be to do with fairness, can be to do with discussing things that have been hidden. So we're seeing more and more stuff come out, whether it's been control of people in terms of slavery, or modern slavery, or we've seen sexual scandals make their way into the open, because the sign of Aquarius is much more open than Capricorn, which is more about neat power. But also it's about our future. So we're talking about technology a lot, but particularly AI. So that link between Pluto and Mercury is very enlivening and has created a debate, quite a passionate debate. But let's look at the pre-retrograde shadow. When does that begin? Well, it was March the 19th. And at 15 degrees and 58 minutes, that's when Mercury slows down, and that's the point it will get back to on the 25th of March, that same set of degrees. But that brings us to the retrograde itself on the 1st of April. I'm sharing that event chart on the screen now. Now there's a supreme irony here. Pluto's still in the sign of Aquarius. It's moved forward a bit, but Mercury's near to the end of Aries, so they're in a technical square. If Mercury was 1 degree in Taurus, it would be more obvious. So it's within about 3 or 4 degrees. That's pretty close. If that was a natal chart, that would be very important and influential. So here, what we can get in the square is dogma, We probably all experience someone in our lives who has a might is right attitude, and it's their way or no way. And that could be something that we experience through the retrograde itself. So because of that potential for distortion that we had at the start of the year, now we can have someone who's leveraging up, using the power of Pluto, and perhaps even their money, because Pluto can be about money, to propagate their ideas in a way that's driven a lot by a motive that may not be particularly obvious, and that is Pluto. So Pluto in Aquarius can seem very open, out there and transparent, but it's still Pluto. It still can be energies that aren't necessarily clearly obvious. So watch out through this particular retrograde period for the type of person who likes to really push their ideas on there. So it could be in a personal situation. You may meet a contractor who's very belligerent. It could be a company that you're trying to buy or deal with and find them very unhelpful. So it's important for all of us not to be browbeaten. And you can see that the Sun is pretty close to the North Node on this event as Mercury goes retrograde. They came together in terms of the true node on the 4th of April. I did a special on that. I'll pop a link for that underneath this video. That's also a truly significant event. And because the sign of Aries is the sign of initiation, and when we get things off the ground, we must expect with Mercury retrograde in Aries that some things we try won't actually make it. And as we go along, we'll have to amend, even as we experience frustrations and obstacles, which could be hugely annoying. Once we do amend it and accept that, we can actually reach a point which is right for us at the end of the whole process, which is when Mercury comes out of the post-retrograde shadow on the 13th of May. So the one other thing we need to adopt is a modicum of acceptance that not everything will flow just as we would like. So the inevitable glitches we get with Mercury retrogrades can be very, very annoying for sure. But if it's something more important that we're starting, or we're trying to inject more energy into an ongoing strand that's really vital, just be aware it may need to adapt. And the fire of Aries can give us the passion to go again. So that's where we need to see the opportunity. So if something hasn't been quite working for us, and particularly if you have got any cardinal influences in terms of your natal chart, between about 24 degrees and about 2 degrees, 24 degrees Aries and 2 degrees, maybe 1 or 2 degrees Taurus, fixed energies. So if you've got a fixed energy from Taurus, Leo, Scorpio or Aquarius, or you've got the cardinal of Aries, Cancer, Libra or Capricorn late, then you could feel this event a lot more. But of course, by the end of the process, Mercury will have inverted back to 15 degrees and 58. So it can affect a lot of people from really the very earliest point of Taurus right back to about 12 or 13 degrees Aries, or all the cardinal points and the fixed signs, but very early on the degrees. So it's going to have a big impact, and therefore the frustration that can come from Aries when things don't go right could give us some headaches, and we could also find ourselves needing to get that energy off our chests. And don't feel bad, you know, if you need to have a bit of a yell or get the pillow out, that can be very healthy. But we need to have an acceptance that some amendments can be needed. And if something hasn't been working in our life, so say for example, we haven't been engaging with something with enough passion, the fire of Aries, this is a chance to apply that passion. If we're not wanting to accept there needs to be change, Pluto, that's going to cause problems if we're resisting. So this is all feeding into this big picture. So I really wish you well for it. It is something that professional astrologers try to push back on, that Mercury retrograde will only cause niggles. It can create those wonderful opportunities too. And a lot of it is about our mindset. So if we think, Mercury, that things are going to be awkward, well, that will be our reality. If we accept, because we're being really detached about it, which can be another part of Mercury's energy for its rulership of Gemini, that there can be things that go awry, but we're going to take them in our stride because actually there's a bigger opportunity to cut through the mist that Mercury square with Neptune created right at the start of the year. So before I go through each of the 12 zodiac signs, I'll just share with you the big aspects that are upcoming. We've talked about when Mercury moved into Aries, that tremendously positive angle to Pluto, but a much more challenging one as Mercury goes retrograde. However, on the 11th of April, Mercury and the Sun come into what's known as a GEMINI. This is where they're exactly aligned, or Mercury's in the heart of the Sun. So the power of the Sun amplifies the agility of Mercury. This is known as an inferior conjunction because of the retrograde. Mercury is actually in between the Sun and the Earth. When Mercury is direct, it's a superior conjunction, and Mercury's the other side of the Sun. But still gives us an opportunity to rethink with the warmth, drive and passion the Sun gives us. So that can be very useful. On the 15th, we have a conjunction with Chiron, giving us a chance to think about our self-worth, how we help people, but also how we don't feel heard and validated. On the 19th, an absolutely gorgeous link with Venus. This is at 17 degrees and 42 exactly. And, you know, if there is something that needs to be discussed, even though Venus is detrimented in Aries, the quick wits of Mercury and the charm of Venus suggest that a message can be articulated in a very skillful way. Then on May the 7th, we have a repetition of the conjunction with Chiron, but this time at 21 degrees and 2 minutes. So those are the big aspects. Some healing potential there, some flirty potential with Mercury and Venus, and also some commercial potential. Venus, after all, is the money planet. But that GEMINI on the 11th is the standout influence that we can expect in the time of the retrograde. I'd like to ascend above the following zodiac broadcast and embrace the power of more serious astrology. If you give me 3 pieces of personal birth data of time, date and place, I can produce for you your life roadmap report. This will give you searing insights into what makes you so unique, but also the patterns that have played out in your life so far. A more intimate understanding of this can help you to seize opportunities better going forwards. In my special package of 30% off, you can also get your 12-month transit forecast. That's the moving planets in the sky applying to your totally unique natal blueprint. Now, if you've already had that package, but you're interested in draconic astrology, soul, karmic astrology, then please check out the package for that. It's really exciting process. It's very much to do with the energy that we came into this world with in terms of our past life. The natal chart is the energy we're working on within this life. Again, 30% off. Please see the link below for more. So Aries, this Mercury retrograde comes at quite a unique time because yes, it could slow you down. It could be inhibiting in some ways. Not everything may power along quite as you would like, but have they recently anyway? I think your physical vitality may have been quite low. I feel that there may have been some issues from your past that you've had to deal with. You may not have had quite the traction you've wanted anyway. So all that the Mercury retrograde's going to do is help you to sharpen up your thinking about what you want to do in the here and now. The energy still in Pisces suggests that needs to be dealt with as well. My prediction is that by the end of the retrograde on the 25th, you will be storming forwards because the arrival of Venus in your sign later this week on the 5th and its brilliant angle to Pluto is stunning. But you also have the conjunction between the Sun and the true North Node on the 4th in your sign, and then the total solar eclipse. So such a lot of energy building up for you. So try to be philosophical. If one or two things are a bit sticky, are a bit irritating, but actually what it's helping you to do is slow down a little bit, consider the big picture, but most of all take into account your psychological needs as much as the things that you instantly feel that you want to get done. So Taurus, however bubbly, sociable and interactive that you generally like to be, over the period of this particular Mercury retrograde, and perhaps to a degree over the next 6 months, I feel that there will be times when you need to embrace your personal inner temple. What I mean by that is that this doesn't mean to say you have to cut yourself off from people completely, but if you just give yourself the space for tranquility and complete relaxation, it's going to be very, very valuable to you. If you are going through a time when your personal vitality does feel a little bit lower and you're unsure about your long-term future aims because of Saturn applying pressure in your 11th house, or some social interactions have seemed to have gone a little bit cooler or quieter, take the opportunity to take a breath. If the phone's not ringing as much, text messages aren't pinging, you don't hear from people, all the classic stuff that can happen with Mercury 12th house, the main thing is to see it as an opportunity for rest, recuperation and restoration. And if you seize that opportunity, in terms of your personal development and expansion of your psychological insights, what an amazing period that you're entering. What may prove a little bit challenging is there could be certain relationships that you do feel deeply disappointed by. If someone's not in touch, not keeping an eye on you, if you feel a little quieter, even those thoughtful text messages can really make a difference. And if you feel starved of those, that is something that you may find quite painful. 12th house energy, unfortunately, can flag up the type of relationships which are of a more fair weather kind, those fair weather friendships. But all of this is helping you to rinse out of your situation what's not really serving your greater purpose. So it's a wonderful time for you to just take it easy, rest your mind, get in nature. If you can, have some saunas or perhaps some nice healing treatments too. So Gemini, when Mercury goes retrograde, that has a particular impact for you, because if you think about it, your mind is like a foil, you know, one of those foils they use in sort of the Olympics where they're very quick, because that's how alert you are and how you pivot very fast. So if Mercury is retrograde, there could be some times when timing is just a bit off, not necessarily yours, maybe other people's, don't quite get where you're coming from. And all of that's inevitable. The 11th house where this occurs can be about your future hopes. It could be that something that you've aspired to for a long time now starts to evaporate in terms of its importance as other new possibilities start to grip and excite you, such as the gathering of energy that's going to be manifesting in this part of your situation. For things to develop, you need some space. So be philosophical. Certain friendships make way, new ones are coming along. A sense of excitement really is there from me for you about what this next 6 months holds. Inevitably, when it comes to your social situation, there could be some changes of plan, maybe around a group matter or one particular friendship. That may be a bit disappointing. It may be linked actually to someone that you know through your work. But generally speaking, over the next half year, the people that you have met and the alliances that you've forged and the network you've built up can be very important for your professional hopes as much as your more social and more idealistic aspirations too. So Cancer, if you've been trying to refocus your hopes or goals, particularly around the areas of life where you can provide your leadership, you know, whether it is helping younger members of your family, whether it's interacting with your local community, whether it's any voluntary roles you have, or it is more around your career, this Mercury retrograde may see things slow down initially, and that actually could seem a little bit frustrating because Saturn is in your 9th house. So if you're keen to change something up, the progress may not rattle along quite as you want for the next week or so. But despite the retrograde, once we get to the Sun's combination with Mercury on the 11th, which is a GEMINI, that will be a splendid opportunity for you to have an interview, do a presentation, talk to someone influential, give some guidance. And part of the reason why I feel that this is an interesting Mercury retrograde for us all is because there's such a lot of other energy manifesting in the sign of Aries, which for you is where you can shine. It's where you can let people know about the assistance from the experience and knowledge that you've gained over a long period of time. However, equally, because of that square between Mercury and Pluto when the retrograde begins, if there is somebody who's not ready to receive your wisdom, then you may have to bite your tongue, which could be a bit frustrating if it is a family member that you feel could benefit from your help. So Leo, this Mercury retrograde occurs in your solar 9th house, which can be to do with travel, can be to do with contracts, can be to do with widening our horizons, can be to do with contacts internationally, can be to do with higher education. So all those areas may be areas that you're taking a closer look at, but of course it could be areas that provide some stumbles or some issues, not necessarily because you're not doing anything right, just because that's what Mercury retrograde tends to create. However, the 9th house can have a bit of a disinclination to look at details. And because you're in such a dramatic moment of your whole situation, particularly with all the energy about to pile into Aries and really take you forwards in such a potent way, it's possible that you could rush a decision or not quite think about the minutiae, which could be really important. So even if that type of stuff is very, very dull, zeroing in on it actually could prevent some kind of glitch coming up, an unintended consequence. But generally speaking, if you are wanting to be much more dynamic over the next half year, and it's truly possible that you can be, it's all about really your strategy and making sure that you deploy your strategy in a very step-by-step, thorough and accurate way. So you can grapple but also grow and gain from this retrograde, but it does require you to be particularly alert. Virgo, your great talent is for precision. So you're hardly going to let that go when your ruler goes into a retrograde in the part of your situation to do with joint finances, banking, savings, pensions, shares, contractual discussions, all this kind of good stuff. Particularly when there is the GEMINI on the 11th, that actually could be a point where something good comes from these discussions. It's also a case with Mercury retrograde that something that hasn't been quite right in those areas can be re-examined. And maybe because the 8th house is about mysteries, you can unlock something by looking afresh, and you may surprise yourself by what you discover. And also because you do have those two planets, Jupiter and Uranus in the 9th house, your natural inquisitiveness and determination to make some changes can also be an asset. Now, what you can't control, obviously, is if the banking technology with your provider goes down, or your telephone and all this kind of good stuff. And we know that's entirely possible with Mercury retrograde. But your talent for discrimination and really refining things and also understanding what's really key. The only thing I would say to you is that Virgo and the 8th house energy are quite probing. So it's also important just to, at times, just widen the lens and step back so you can see the bigger picture as well. And that reveals that another area that continues to provide a possible challenge is Saturn in the 7th house. So you may be dealing with some people who seem to be resistant to the common sense and wisdom that you're providing. And that's when the retrograde can see you get frustrated, but stay cool. Actually enjoy. If someone is being awkward, enjoy outwitting them. See this as a challenge that you are going to win. Now Libra, I might not be right in saying this, but I feel that one of your pet peeves is when people don't respond in kind. So, you know, that old saying, treat people how you like to be treated yourself. I feel that you really can relate to that, that word. So the 7th house is where we relate. It's known as the descendant. And obviously there's a whole load of action building up in this area, and a wonderful development is the arrival of Venus, your ruler, on Friday the 5th, but on the 4th, the conjunction between the North Node and the Sun, the first in your 7th house for 18 years, so that's huge. So we could get caught up in thinking about Mercury retrograde as the glass half empty, but maybe it's a chance for you to just check out how you relate as well, where your listening skills are. Sometimes it's hard to be self-analytical when in general our mode of being is quite giving, which I think can be the case with Libra people, very attentive to other people. So to think that there may be some more things that you might need to analyse can be a bit galling in a way, but actually for all of us, we never stop learning. It's incredibly true of astrology. Anyone who thinks that they've cracked astrology, well, you kind of completely stunted once we think we've got it all worked out. So there may be some opportunities to revisit, reconnect, rethink, have some conversations, sharpen up listening skills. And of course, it's a mutual process. It can't just come from you or from me with my Libra ascendant. And maybe someone who's been a little bit out of touch could get in touch, and it could be quite a surprise. And that can happen with Mercury retrograde, but the general build-up of energy is so positive around your relationship sector that something can really shift in a very dynamic way over the next half year, or even perhaps over the next year, if we take the solar eclipse in your sign into account of the 2nd of October, conjunct Mercury, the planet of communication that's going retrograde, in a very positive way. So really the next year has so many opportunities for you to relate, but also shine as an individual. Scorpio, because this Mercury retrograde occurs in your 6th house, that has quite the echo of the sign of Virgo. The 6th house is generally about precision, about the details in our situation, organisation, can be appointments. Those type of appointments that, you know, are annual reviews, the checkups, pets as well, all these areas. And of course, this is part of a theme for you at the moment because of the Sun being in that part of your situation, the North Node, Chiron, Venus arriving on the 5th, and some very powerful conjunctions, including the solar eclipse with Chiron, which is about health. A 6th house can be about the physical realm in terms of our well-being. So maybe you could have a little think, Mercury, or have a chat, or ponder, do some research in that kind of Virgoan way, which is very precise, trying to discriminate if small but important changes and nudges in your situation could make much of a difference. But there's another thing with this Mercury retrograde. All the energy, including your traditional ruler of Mars in your 5th house, is really pushing you to showcase your talent at the moment. But talent needs to be boxed up and formed in a way which is something tangible. So that might be a way that you can take something that you're enjoying that helps you to express yourself and your flair and your artistry, but the Mercury retrograde can give you the little details and the plan and the precision to really deliver. So Sagittarius, since Saturn moved into your 4th house just over a year ago, it may have been more difficult for you to really freely express yourself and interact with other people socially in the way that you may have been used to in the past. Neptune's been subtly but powerfully changing your approach since 2012. There may have been more family responsibilities, more emotional insights, a lot of growth, even if at times things felt a little bit confusing or unclear. This Mercury retrograde is a primer in a way for so much good stuff that's coming for you, not just over this 23 days of the Mercury retrograde itself, including the cazimi on the 11th of April with the Sun, but if we take the solar eclipse in of the 8th, 9th if you're in Australia, and the Libran solar eclipse of the 2nd of October, which is conjunct Mercury but not in a retrograde, the next year can see you really step forwards and engage with other people in a much more dynamic way, which is more in keeping with how you perhaps used to be. But the difference now is all the emotional knowledge and experience that you've gained, which, though it may have seen some painful encounters or developments or experiences, that has really given you a much greater understanding of your personal needs, but also of what other people might want from you and what their needs might be. But if you do find yourself getting, cancelled, if there's a date set up or a get together with friends is suddenly rescheduled, just take it in your stride, because you really are building up such a welter of energy that's so dynamic, and your charisma can shine brightly. It's just through this Mercury retrograde there may be some final adjustments and touches around some creative plans, or there may be some new ideas or thinking coming around your romantic or social situation, but you are gaining traction and it will become more obvious before too long. So Capricorn, Mercury retrograde in the 4th house. If you are trying to negotiate the lease, rental or purchase or sale of a property, then it's obvious that this could be a little challenging, in the sense that somebody you encounter may not be quite as efficient or on the ball or committed as you are. That we can't control. But the 4th house of Mercury is not its best location. It's where ideas or thoughts we have, potentially sensitive thoughts, can go round and round in our minds, and we find it more difficult to output them. It's almost like a Mercury in Cancer situation. So if you do find yourself feeling a bit tongue-tied or lying there at night with an idea going around your head, it wouldn't be a complete surprise. But I think what the energies coming in are really shaping up for you at this time is trying to shift you on from that part of your nature which is so capable and so successful in extracting the most from whatever talents you've got, or being very disciplined and hard-working and accomplished, and people tend to have a lot of respect for you. But in a way, all these energies in your 4th house are asking you to open up a little bit, be a little bit more vulnerable, not necessarily be the person who always takes the steer or takes charge or provides leadership. And that may feel like a new experience, or it's possible that someone very close to you might actually say something to you about an observation, talk and thought 4th house in terms of your emotional reactions. Perhaps they feel at times you can be a little bit defensive, or perhaps a bit negative in your thinking, and they may tell you. That may be something that you could analyse for yourself. It's not me saying it, it's not the stars saying it, it's this cluster of energy and Mercury in the 4th house. Those are all the possible ways it can manifest for you. But equally, Mercury in the 4th house could see you have a conversation that may be long overdue. So maybe someone's going to open up to you in the family, for example, and tell you some information, Mercury, that can make you feel a lot more secure and safe. So Aquarius, Mercury going retrograde in the 3rd house is a very Gemini influence. We know Mercury governs Virgo too, very much about precision. Gemini, very flirty, quick-witted, likes to interact, lots of mental stimulation. So one of the things that could happen with this transition is there may be a tendency to overthink. Also, Mercury and the 3rd house govern our nervous system. So if we're trying to spin too many plates, that's me to a T, I have Mercury in the 3rd house, it's easy to drop one and then sort of feel a bit exasperated because we've got to do something again. Mercury 3rd house is also very much about tech, whether it's emails, modems, routers, phones, PCs, laptops, all that kind of stuff. So something there could prove to be a little bit frustrating and unreliable, or a domestic appliance may need to be repaired or updated. So But we know that kind of stuff's coming, don't we? So how do we deal with it? But also see that the third house is about our community. It's about our beliefs. It's about our interaction with our siblings. It can be, if we're interested in sharing ideas, very much to do with the media. So a chance to perhaps revisit the way ideas are expressed, or if there is somebody quite close to you that never seems to be quite tuned in or very receptive, maybe Mercury retrograde can give you the opportunity to analyze Virgo, where you might approach this in a slightly different way. But a lot of extra energies coming in, and maybe that will create some tension. So looking after that side of things is important, with the early nights, with the walking, with the exercise, to burn off that adrenaline that naturally gets built up for us all. But there's also that huge welter of energy coming with the Sun's combination with the North Node on the 4th, Venus moving on the 5th into the 3rd house, connecting with Pluto, first time in over 220 years, and the solar eclipse combining with Chiron. If you haven't felt heard, weirdly, at this particular time, Mercury is perhaps just pushing you to refine some of your ways of expressing things, or your beliefs themselves, or examining some of the interactions you do have, but actually from it something really exciting can be developing. So information is key, isn't it, these days? Unfortunately, we tend to get absolutely bamboozled by so much data, and that can be very overwhelming. So the other Virgo part of this transition could be to be a bit more discriminating about what you expose yourself to. So those are a few ideas for you, Aquarius, but generally, with so much good stuff coming, the next year can be a time when your ability to mesmerize people with information could absolutely skyrocket. So Pisces, Mercury going retrograde in the 2nd house can be about everyday money. And it is important, particularly if we are buying or selling online, that we're very precise in our approach. Make sure that we don't miss any small but important details. Also, perhaps the 2nd house is an opportunity to think about how much you value yourself. Think Mercury, or have a discussion. Maybe there is some rethinking to do in this area. The 2nd house can also be about foundation. If you can find some more discriminatory ways of embracing Mercury's rulership of Virgo to refine your approach, see where you can get a bit more value or squeeze a bit more out of your budget, or sell some things you don't need because actually they clutter your mental space as much as your emotional space. But if you have been thinking carefully about perhaps starting a small enterprise and just trying to do a bit of a business plan, maybe is over the next few weeks, things won't quite accelerate at the pace you want, but actually you're moving into a time where financially there's a lot of dynamic energy coming in that's going to last pretty well for the next year, which could really reset your whole situation in a way that at the moment you may fear may not be quite possible. Chances are it will turn out a little bit better than you may think, as long as you apply yourself with Mercury retrograde's help. But if someone does owe you some money, then it is very important that you're persistent. Write letters, ring up, send an email to confirm what's been agreed, and that kind of stuff. So the precision is important at this particular time. It's been a real pleasure being with you and working through this Mercury retrograde. I really wish you all the best with it. If you've yet to do so, please like, comment, share, or subscribe.